Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to OutSchool Live, where we do a deep dive on topics that will interest you and your families on their learning journey. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to go straight into it, and we're going to talk about gaming. If you are gaming with Miss Devon, and if you're if you're not sure about games, right, and you're not sure where they fit in education, tune in and let us know your thoughts, because I think Miss Devon will help you see about games a little bit differently. So I'm going to bring Miss Devon to the stage. Uh, Miss Devon,
Hey,
let's get
Fernando.
straight into it. Let's talk about video games. And while you talk about video games, I'm gonna do a little troubleshooting because we're still on. Actually, give me an intro. Tell me about yourself. No, we're gonna start straight to the problem. Video games.
Video games.
Why is this an important topic?
Well, here's the thing about video games is they are amazing and fun, and people don't always resonate with video games because they see them as a waste of time, or like you could be doing something better with your day and stuff. But the thing about video games is that what you learn in video games is extremely applicable to so many different aspects of life. And so what I have found, what me and my teachers have found, is that as we validate our students' interest in video games, they trust us, they have more self-confidence in themselves, and they're just excited that they're an expert in something, and it really, really gives us this amazing relationship with our students.
Um, so all right, I'm gonna be honest. We had some tech errors, and Megan, if you can help me
Fine.
get signed into Facebook, it looks like it's having trouble. I might have fixed it. Um, but Megan, if you can help me out there, we really appreciate it. Um, yeah, so there is stigma that is attached to video games. Can you talk a little bit more about that parents might have themselves about video games, or even maybe confusion with their learners who are uh you know maybe I think my kid is playing too many video games. I can't get them to do their homework, or yeah, talk about more about this stigma.
So I think the stigma that I see personally in the world is that if you play games, that it's a weird thing or that you're just wasting time and that it's not worth anything. That's the stigma that's out there. But what happens is when you attach that stigma to a hobby like video games, anyone who enjoys that hobby is being put down, right? So imagine if someone said the same thing about gardening or the same thing about sewing or about sports, right? Those don't have that same stigma as video games. And so what happens is a lot of times I will see learners come into my classroom and they don't have a community of gamers the same way that a student might have a community of fellow basketball players or a fellow readers or something, because it's hard to find video game friends because people don't always want to talk about how much they love video games because they're afraid that people are going to be like, "Whoa, you're way too into video games." And so there's this stigma, and like I've experienced it where I kind of like tampered down my gaming side until I'm like, okay, we're good enough friends that I know you can handle my gaming side. But it's something that I see with my students all the time. And it's something that really impacts confidence, especially in young kids, if everyone is devaluing their interests.
I haven't thought about it from that aspect of, I think, oof, right, kids get together on the things that interest them. And and I'm hearing you say, right, which makes sense, if we push that down, then that feels like there's something wrong with them.
Yep.
Um, oh, interesting.
And it's hard
Uh,
too for people to find fellow gamers because, schools will naturally have. I always like to compare it to like a chess club or a volleyball club. Like there's these after school clubs for other things like sports. And so if you play sports, if you love volleyball, you have a volleyball team. But if you love video games and you want to play video games, there's not a video game club until you come to our classes on Outschool. That's what we do. And so it's a lot of friends that connect from all over the world. But I ask a lot of my students, they're like, I don't know anyone in my area who likes video games or who plays video games. And so Outschool lets them connect with other people no matter where they are.
yeah, and you're mentioning too that with with without school, it in your classes, it becomes a safe avenue for games.
Absolutely, because gaming, internet is everywhere. Internet is very important in a lot of gaming games, in a lot of video games. There's my words. So, like, I'll give you a real simple example. Okay. In Pokemon, your goal is to catch all the Pokemon, right? You want all of them. There are specific Pokemon you can only catch if I trade it to you and then you trade it back. Okay. That's an online aspect that you absolutely have to have if you want to achieve this goal in Pokemon. But you don't want to let your kids just go onto the internet where there's strangers in these public servers where maybe they send their Pokemon off to a friend and the friend steals the Pokemon, or they're in a public server in a public chat and parents don't know who they're talking to. The person says that they're someone, they might not be that person. And so, what our classes do is it lets kids have a safe place where it's moderated by an adult and they're able to make friends in a real place where they can make sure that they have friends that are kids too. So it's a huge safety thing for parents. That's what a lot of parents say to me. They're like, I love that my kids can go online and game, but I know that it's okay. I know they're safe. I know that there's not anything crazy happening. So that is a huge thing that we solve that problem of unsafe internet access for kids.
I'm not gonna lie, that does scare me a little bit about, these, uh, it's easy to assume that, "Oh, it's a kids game," so it's a safe place for kids to go and interact with other kids, and yeah, I don't know, just because it's a video game targeted at kids, I don't know, I do wanna I don't know, this is just like Dad Fernando coming out, he's like, "Check it out, make sure you know everything about that wherever you're sending your learner,"
Mhm.
and so I think that that's definitely an aspect that I can latch onto from, that social element of out school gaming, um, in this social environment. But what about, I mean, thinking, skeptically here, right? Okay, well, what's the
Bring
value
all
of
the
that?
skeptical comments.
All
Let's
right,
hear it.
you're
Let's hear
okay,
it.
so you're bringing the kids together, play games, but
Right.
what are they like? What are they learning?
What are they
Like,
learning?
yeah, are
Good
they learning?
question. They are
Yeah.
learning so much. So, what a lot of people, so I love your comment about like as a parent, you try and make sure your kids are in a safe space. I'm a mom too. I've got 4 girls and yeah, online gaming is so scary, right? But the thing is too is that parents a lot of times just see the surface level of a video game. Okay? You see a game like Pokemon. We'll talk about Pokemon since that's what we're going on right now. But you see a game like Pokemon and all you see is like, "Oh, you're making them fight. You're making them battle." That's encouraging violence or, those kinds of conversations. But the thing about Pokemon specifically, and honestly, I don't even know all of the details of Pokemon, but with Pokemon, you have a Pokemon and it has a certain number of health, it has a certain number of power, defense, all these things. And so you are using math skills to make sure that your Pokemon is strong enough to withstand the onslaught from the opposing Pokemon. And so it sounds very, very easy surface level. But the thing is, there are specific things, items you can give your Pokemon. There are different moves you can teach them. And so you start to learn this math, this probability of like, okay, if I give my Pokemon this item, it's going to make it this much stronger, but it's also going to make it this much weaker. Is it worth it? And so students are starting to learn just intuitively the probability of things, the consequences, action, reaction kind of situation, cause effect. Like math in Pokemon is immense. Like I can't even begin to describe how much math there is in Pokemon, just in that one little aspect of the battle. And so that's with Pokemon. But then you take a game like Zelda. I teach a lot of Zelda classes, and your goal is to save Hyrule, right? That's the big picture. But along the way, you're making money. You have to buy armor. Your stuff breaks. You have to prioritize different quests based on things that you want. And so, as students are going through this, what I'll see students do is they're like, all right, Miss Devon, I really want to buy this armor. There's this armor that I really want. And I'm like, okay, well, how much is it? And they're like, oh, it's 5,000 rupees. And I'll be like, okay, how many rupees do you have? They're like, I have 200 rupees. And so then we talk, and I'm like, well, what are the best ways that you can make money quickly? And they're like, well, I could sell food. And I'm like, hey, but if you do this, you could optimize that sale. And so then they start to do this. I'm like, okay, so how much do you need to do to be able to sell to get that piece of armor? And then they'll go out and they'll do it. Or they'll be like, you know what? That armor actually isn't very good. I don't want it. I'm going to budget my money differently and use it on this other thing. So there's so many things that video games teach kids just intuitively while they're playing.
That sounds sort of fun, like side hustle classes with Zelda. Uh,
Oh yes, it is. Yeah, that is exactly what it is.
all right, I'm gonna still push on the subject. So, okay, I see. Yeah, I even see like potential for like executive functioning skills with that, like pre-planning and
Mhm.
focus on a project, which I learned. I think this is one of our parent community uh, book clubs that Megan was leading. That um, executive functioning is actually really strongly based on interest. Like that's what drives the focus on something in order to be able to push a project through from beginning to end.
Mhm.
I see that in myself. But um, okay, so they're learning how to do a project in a video game that's
Mhm.
fun for them. Like, does that cross over into, like, leading a I don't wanna say leading a company, like, it's not like we need all of our kids to lead companies, but does that translate into, I guess, like, academic? How does that translate into academic fields? Or, how's that gonna help my kid pass math, ninth grade math?
And that's a
Um,
great question. And you're right, not everyone needs to be, leader of a company, but just a productive member of society, right? How can video games help a child become a productive member of society, whatever that looks like, right?
be a
Well,
cog in the wheel or the machine.
exactly. Become a cog in the machine. That's what we want all of them to be. No.
Yes, please.
But I love, there's a couple comments coming through, and Nancy said, it helps her with critical thinking, problem solving, reading comprehension. And Megan, or not Megan, excuse me, Miss Polly said Skylanders taught her child to read. A lot of video games don't have voice actors, so you have to read everything that is coming through. And so it's like, are they going to learn how to read, a novel based on reading a video game? Yeah, they can, because when they're reading the video game, they care to put in the work. If I give my daughter a video game and I'm like, okay, go play, and she says, what do I do? And I say, you have to read it to figure it out. She is developing those reading skills in a fun way. And that will translate into reading. So next time she has a book, maybe it's not as scary to read, or she has that confidence, like, oh yeah, I read Pokemon all the time. And I can read this book too. And so that's one of the very direct ways, is like with reading and with math. But also, the other thing about video games is a video game is really just a series of puzzles that you have to solve in a creative way with the tools that are given to you, which really is all that life is anyway, right? You're all like, that's all, we're all
No
living in a
map,
puzzle.
no manual. Like, man,
Exactly. No manual, nothing. You just have to figure it out. And so video games really spark that creativity in kids, because they're like, okay, I have to get my hero from point A to point B, and all I have is a stick. How am I going to do this? And so then they'll go through these problems and solve them in different ways so they can get their hero from point A to point B. So it really does make a difference. And I have found personally with me, like with video games, I have a really awesome. Oh, there's an audio. Oh, sorry. There we go. There we go. Sorry. I saw your comment, Megan, about the audio. Yeah, let me know if the audio is rough or anything, team. But I found that personally with video games, as I play them and as I teach them, my students just gain this self confidence because, like we talked about at the beginning, all of a sudden their interests are validated and they want to try harder. They want to do more things. That's one of the biggest comments I get from parents, is that as soon as I validate their interest in video games, they are more confident in their normal lives too, in other things.
yeah, you said something too in one of our earlier discussions, um, about that you found that sometimes too, when kids find their online gaming community, they actually will start gaming less.
Yes, yeah. And I think that it's interesting. Yeah. So we did talk about this. So what happens with gaming a lot of times is the stigma that we were talking about, is it's gaming alone in a dark place by themselves, right? And that's the stigma. Antisocial, not interested in in the real world. But what happens in our social clubs is now they have a community of friends, and now gaming with friends is more fun than gaming by themselves. So maybe they'll still play some games on their own, but I find a lot of my students, they're like, I haven't played all week because I was waiting so I could play with my friends, so I could be here with my friends. And so it's also just creating a healthy relationship with other students and with games and with socialization, all of those things coming together in one place.
That makes sense too. I mean, like you said, right? So my community growing up is a lot of times in choirs, right, or
Mhm.
musical groups and bands, and
Yes.
we don't like the music is ends up becoming a smaller and smaller portion of it. We start
Mhm.
doing dinners together, then we start hanging out together, we just start go to movies together, and um, so that completely makes sense remove even some of that stigma of, okay, oh, that makes sense. It's like anything else.
It's like
Um,
anything else. Exactly. Exactly.
it
And
also
go
oh, go
ahead.
ahead, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, and it's like you said with music, video games are just the starting
Mm,
point. It's just the common
mm,
interest, it's where we
mm.
start, and then we go all over the place in my classes. We talk about books and movies and other things that kids are interested in, but it's knowing that you have that common denominator of games, you trust the people around you a little bit more.
Um, absolutely. All right, I'm going into all right, you do the question on my mind. You do tutoring with games.
Yes.
How does that work? I'm trying to think of, like, some skeptical question because it still feels like you're just playing with kids, like, how is this what are you doing? Like, what are parents I mean, what are parents paying you to do by playing with their kid one-on-one in video games? Like,
Okay. I have a perfect example for you, Fernando. I have a perfect
alright,
example because I just had a parent reach out to me a few weeks ago and she said, "My son really wants to learn how to play Zelda and his friends are making fun of him because he doesn't know anything about Zelda." So put yourself in this student's mind. His self confidence is low. He feels like he doesn't fit in with his friends at this moment, right? Because they know things he does not know. Mom
I
and
mean, I have
dad
a
are.
bone to pick with those friends, I'm just saying, like,
I
I
know.
got a
That's what
bone to
I
pick.
know. I told him, I was like, those are not your friends.
Yeah,
It's like, you go
right,
find better friends.
yes,
But
right,
it was
but
something he wanted, right? He's like, I
mhm,
want to learn so that I can connect with my friends in a different way. So mom reaches out to me and says, "Hey, could you teach him how to play Zelda?" And I said, "Absolutely. I have group classes. Would he like to join a group class?" Because again, I think of the socialization. And mom, again, it's the confidence thing. Mom was like, he feels like he's at ground zero. He just needs a start, he needs a push. And so I was like, absolutely, let's do it. So he comes and he asks me all of the simplest questions about Zelda that he felt embarrassed to even have to ask. Like I feel like as adults, we feel that a lot. It's like, I don't know what it's like that Andy Dwyer meme. It's like, I don't know. And at this point, I'm afraid to ask.
yeah, yeah,
And so that's how he felt. He's like, at this point, I feel like I'm afraid to ask. I'm afraid of the ridicule. I'm afraid of anything. And so it was, again, a safe space where he knew I wasn't going to judge him. I was going to give him the tools that he needed. But so it started there. Okay. So me and him, we've been meeting for about a month. And now what we do in every class, we're not playing Zelda anymore. Now he is creating a world. He is writing and drawing and doing maps and everything, a new world that he has created based off of this Zelda game we were playing. And so now we're writing stories together. And so this Zelda has interested him enough in storytelling that now, like, he and I are writing a Zelda play. And every class we write a Zelda play together. And he's like, "This is so fun. I love this." He's like, "I want to come more." And so again, video games, it's just the starting point. It's that common interest. It's that story that you can connect with people on. But then it just grows and it explodes and it's amazing.
um, uh, that's exciting to hear. I think it reminds me of it's so easy, and I think we were touching on this, like, it's so easy to discredit, um, a kid and their interests, and I think I even see that as with teens, right? And sometimes
Yes.
adults are like, "Oh, I don't get these teenagers," right? Like, "I don't get why they're interested in these things," and I think that sometimes that's that limiter of,
Mhm.
well, if you don't understand or try to understand if we don't try to understand why someone likes something, like, that's the limit of our relationship with them.
Mhm.
Oh, what did you said something about resistance, about, um, almost like breaking down resistance and using that interest in a subject or that interest yeah, interest in video games to sort of break down the resistance to approach different subjects.
Yeah. Yeah, because all so a good example, I do not like math, Fernando. I don't Are you a math person? I'm not a math person. I
Um,
struggle with math. Math is hard, okay?
yeah, I tried well, I'm trying to get over that thing, right? It's so easy for all of us to be, like, readily accept, like, to, knock down math. So I'm
That's
trying to,
valid. That's
it's like,
valid. That's
you
valid.
know, math is
That's
great. I like
fine.
it. I love it.
My
I love
my brain does
splitting
not
my
work.
sanity too.
My brain does not work in a math way, but I'm going to use math as an example, but
Alright.
put your own worst subject in this situation, okay? So
How's
with math,
tuning?
if you have a student who says, "I don't like math. Math is hard, it is frustrating. I get a headache every time I do math. What if you were to take that math problem and instead of saying Joey went to the store and bought 7 apples and Amelia went to the store and bought 10 apples, how many apples do they have altogether? Right? Instead of taking this
17,
very, you got it? What is it?
17,
You
17.
got it. Wait, hold on. Yeah, it's 17. I had to check. But so instead of saying Amelia and Joey are buying apples, what if all of a sudden you have it be you are a Pokemon trainer. You have 7 Pikachus and 7 Snorlaxes. How many Pokemon do you have? It is the exact same thing, but now the kids care. They're more interested in it, right? Or if it's like, okay, a Snorlax weighs as much Snorlax weighs 20 pounds, we'll say, and a Pikachu weighs 5 pounds. How many Pikachus do we need to fill a Snorlax? Right? It's the same idea that you would learn in a math class. It's just making it interesting. And so when you make it interesting for the kids, then all of a sudden, again, it's not as scary. It's like you said, that resistance barrier is gone. Now, the next time they see a word problem that's about Joey and Amelia or whatever fake name I made up, they're like, oh, this is just like Snorlax and Pikachu. This is easy. I can do this. And again, it's that self confidence because all of a sudden, the things that they care about, the things that they spend hours and hours researching and learning about, it's relevant to their real life.
That that reminds me of the I learned something about like bias and testing
Mhm.
of, like even like SATs or just or multiple choice question that a grade schooler might take. And that there's sometimes these concepts where like the way the question itself is phrased, it's like, all right, if we were in New Zealand, Bob has 5 gumboots and Mary has 7 gumboots. How many gumboots do they have? And if I'm an American taking that test, I'm like, what the heck is a gumboot?
I don't know what a
And then,
gumboot is, Fernando.
right, yeah, exactly. Well, do I have? Oh, I don't have it. They're,
Like, I don't
I
know
think,
what that
waders.
is.
They call them waders or like rubber boots, like
Oh, just
rain
like, yeah,
galoshes.
yeah. Galoshes. I got you. I got you.
Right,
Googling
right. If it was
gumboots now.
galoshes, right, no problem. But so
Exactly.
now our head is stuck here. But this is like the opposite of saying, no, I'm telling you exactly what you know about. They're like, oh yeah, Pokemon and what Loraxes?
Snorlax. That's Snorlax. He's a
My bad.
Pokemon.
Oh, right. Yes,
No
we
way.
talked about this. Right, Pokemon and Snorlax. Oh, I got that. That's 17. Bah.
Exactly.
Right. So like, yeah, just really um approaching it. And I guess it's that ties into that confidence level of right. Like we're approaching this from a subject that you know and love. We can get rid of all these things that you don't know.
Mhm.
And oh, sorry, now I'm taking I'm applying this like straight up to my homeschooling. I'm like, oh wait, I've got to do this um more.
Well, and the interesting thing too is, if you have a kiddo who loves Pokemon and you don't know Pokemon, that's okay because that's the thing we were talking about this yesterday is that me and my teachers, we have been playing video games forever and ever and ever and ever, right? So we know so much about video games. Parents don't necessarily have to know everything about video games. That's where we come in. But as long as you're showing them, like students can see when you enroll them in a video game class, it's like, I care enough about your interest in this video game that I'm going to give you an opportunity to explore this video game more. And so if you want to implement these sorts of things in homeschooling or in, social circles and things, you can always reach out to like our teachers, our organization and be like, "Hey, my student's asking about this game. I don't know anything about it. Can you help me out?" I've had parents reach out at Christmas time and they're like, "My student wants something for Christmas. I don't know what they want. I don't know what a good gift is for them. Can you give me some suggestions?" And I've sent them links. I'm like, yeah, get them this or this. We've talked about this in class. And so even just parents putting forth that effort to try and understand, it's okay if you don't know everything, no one knows everything. But even just putting forth that effort of like, all right, I'm going to put you in a class so that you can have a space where you can play games with your friends. That means so much to kids. It really does.
Um all right, I'm feeling like I'm getting in the zone. I'm like rolling, but I am getting I'm getting stingy
Okay.
with picking your brain, and I should open it up to questions. So
I was gonna say
yeah,
I see some comments, some questions a little bit.
sorry, I'm just cruising along.
You're good.
But yeah, if you have any questions for Miss Devon, pop those questions on the thread. Also, feel free to ask about I told Miss Devon that I'd probably ask this. Ask about a video game if you think uh, if you want to challenge, like stump the champ to see what a kid could learn from this video game. Because I did have this question. I was like, you say any game they can learn
Any game. Any
academic
game.
stuff?
I say that with 100% confidence. There is a skill taught in every single video game that I have ever played, that I have ever seen. There are skills taught in every single one. Absolutely.
Um, all right. So
Like,
either
you pick
pop
a
in your
game.
question,
Pick a game, everyone. Tell me a game, and I'll tell you what you can learn from it. Absolutely.
Pac-Man.
Pac-Man? So you understand in Pac-Man, you have the ghosts that are chasing you, right? And you have to
Uh-huh.
eat the candies, but the ghosts, they get smarter as the game goes on. And so you have to anticipate. So as you get into the higher levels, the ghosts will try and cut you off if you're trying to get the food this way. And so you have to try and trick the ghosts. So if you go this way and the ghosts are trying to go this way, then you can anticipate and come around to get all of the food. So it's about anticipation and planning ahead.
Oh, that was good. That's good. Pole position.
I don't know pole position. I'm like,
It's like
what is
this
that
video
game?
game, it's like that straight up Atari.
Atari. I mean, honestly, a lot of those older video games, a lot of them are about anticipation and pre-planning. Megan said Fall Guys, which is like an obstacle course game. And it's such a fun game. And you just like your little tic tac and you're jumping through these obstacle courses. But what you're going to do in that is a lot of times it's better to stay back and see how other people approach it before jumping right into it. And so, again, there's this planning and adapting and flexibility of the mind where it's like, okay, this didn't work. I got to try something else. Okay, this didn't work. I got to try another thing. And so that's what a lot of video games force you to do is you've got to tweak your thinking and be flexible in your thinking to be able to win. And then when you win, you're like, I won. I did it. And it feels amazing, especially when you have a teacher who gets how hard it is. And they're like, you did it. That was amazing.
Oh yeah, we were talking about that. Like sometimes it takes a master like to know what
Yes.
the beginner is learning.
Hmm.
And I get all right, I'm comparing it to music because that's like my thing. Like
Yep. Yep.
sometimes parents will come and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I don't like I want them to be good at music, but I don't think, I'm not sure they're doing anything right." And I'm listening and like, "Oh no, that's great rhythm." Like they're fine. You're good. Like yeah, I'll work with them to, keep them growing, but like that's a really advanced skill that they're doing that you just hear noise, right? I
Hmm.
just hear blup, blup, blup. I'm like, no, that's good. Um, and again, I'm hearing that you as an educator, the skills that it takes to play Fall Guys. Like to me, it'd be like,
Exactly.
You guys are just playing
Right. It
video
means
games.
nothing to you. Absolutely. You're like,
No,
so what?
yeah, but like, oh, hey, great pre-planning. I saw somebody said Abby Hauser said and adapting, right? Ooh, I saw how you adapted to this. That's really good work there. Um, and you can guide them, right? How might you improve this in the future or
Well,
I
and
don't
I'll
know.
give you a good example. So in my family, I'm the only gamer, which is really funny, because like my siblings, my parents, none of them game. I'm the only gamer. And so I created this world on Animal Crossing. It's a game that I play with my students. And it's basically a virtual dollhouse, is the best way I can explain it. So you can put items and things and you can interact with them. And so I made this amazing Christmas island for my students. And you see, this doesn't mean a lot to you, Fernando, because I know you don't know how to play this game, but I spent hours and hours and hours looking at the right furniture, putting out the right paths, making the houses look so beautiful. I spent so much time on this and I showed it to my family, and my mom was kind of like, cool. Not like, because she didn't get it. And that was fine. It's fine. She doesn't get it, But inside, I was kind of like, oh man, she didn't get it. But then I go to my class and my students see this. They're like, wow, you did all of this, Miss Devin. This is amazing. And so then we reverse it. A student says that to his mom. Mom, look at this amazing thing I made on Minecraft. Mom or dad sees it and is like, that's very cool. But then he comes to class or she comes to class and they're like, look at this thing I made. And I can see the behind the scenes. I'm like, oh, you use redstone. That's an automatic thing. You had to go to this place and this place to gather those items. The amount of work and effort you put in for this end product is amazing. And then that student is like, I am amazing. Like, I'm so amazing. And then that translates into everything. Then they're like, I'm amazing?
I feel like for me, a takeaway. Oh yeah. Yeah, I
You
should
should.
definitely
Oh,
well,
you
actually,
should listen. Yes, you would love video game music, Fernando,
there
so
was
much.
okay, this is related. Thank you, achieving trophy status. This is related because
Let's
I
hear
was
it.
saying I think the takeaway for me that I hope parents walk away with is if your learner shows an interest, really try to, you know, dig in and find out why they're interested in something, even if it's something that maybe, maybe we have a visceral reaction to, and, or maybe we just completely don't know. But if they're showing us something like from a video game and they're excited about it, dig in, find out. I don't know, how would we ask, "Ooh, what makes you excited about it?" And "How did you do this? Like, how long did it take?" And these questions, and that bringing it back to what trophy status had said, when I was digging into some teens
Mhm.
about this video game or like some video games, and they mentioned video game. I was like, okay, what's cool about it? Like, what do you like it? And they said the music.
Music.
And I was like,
Ugh.
what, out of a video game? You're saying the music is a thing? So I went and I like looked up the video game.
What game was it?
And
Now I gotta know which game it is.
I think it was about foxes, and they had to survive with these foxes in the wild, and it's largely silent, or because they're in the forest. But is the music and the soundtrack like accompanied? I don't know, but like I almost cried listening to the music and seeing people talk about it.
Well,
It
and you
was
bring
good.
up a great point because video games, again, people see it very surface level, but the amount of work that goes into a video game, we look at character development, plot, art, soundtrack, the physics of it. All of these things have to be put into a video game for it to be realistic. And so when you look at a game from a different perspective, like I have a teacher who could go on for hours and hours and hours about the music in video games. I have another teacher who could go on for hours and hours and hours about the art, another about the strategy. There's so much to video games. And again, it's that visceral reaction of like, oh, you're spending a lot of time on this. Maybe you shouldn't. But it's like, no, try and understand why they are, because the video games, it's just another learning tool when it's used the right way. And again, when it's validated, that makes a huge difference in a student's life.
I mean, we all know what it feels like to have something that we're interested in and have something that we've, put some heart into it and bring it into somewhere else and know what it feels like to not be appreciated, and not even necessarily appreciated. We don't need a ticker tape parade every time our kid does something or anytime we do
Oh,
something.
yeah.
But, just that aspect of um no interest at all.
Well, and I think parents have to be careful too. So, like a great example is Minecraft. Okay. Minecraft is a game where you place one block at a time. Okay. So, if you're building something huge, it is going to take a lot of time. And so, what I see happen sometimes is this kid will be like, Mom, look at this thing I made. Look at this castle. And Mom says, That castle is amazing. How much time did it take you? It took me 50 hours. 50 hours playing a video game? What do you mean why weren't you doing this instead? Why weren't you doing this? And then the kid is like, oh, I was really proud of this thing that I made. And not that mom's trying to put it down, but mom's thinking you should have been cleaning your room instead or something. But we
That's where
have
you
to
were when I couldn't find you to do this one job.
exactly, but it's something that they care about and that they are passionate about. And so it's so important to make sure that you validate that, because in the same vein, if you have a student who's playing basketball, I think sports are a really good comparison because it also takes a lot of time to develop the skills. If a kiddo comes to you and makes a half court shot and he's like, "Look what I did, mom." And mom says, "That's awesome. How long did it take you to do that?" "It took me 50 hours." Wow, that is dedication. That is amazing. That is focus. You probably learned so much in that. And so that natural tendency to like praise one hobby and dismiss another, kids feel it. They feel it and they're like, "Oh, I'm not them." And so we have to be so careful with these developmental ages that we are always validating things they're doing even if it's not something that we necessarily are interested in.
Um, oh my gosh, that I'm like reviewing, oh right, yeah, right. This, sports and but like even sports and music, right? It makes so much more sense. And like, yeah, but interests, validating the kids' interests. I see a lot of comments on the thing. Oh, trying to guess the games that
They're
I was talking
guessing
about with the foxes. Yeah, I'm
First
not sure. I have
Tree,
to look
Blanc,
into it.
Tunic. There's a lot of games with foxes in them.
First Tree sounds familiar, but I remember the teenager was saying like, yeah, I had to raise foxes, and then some of them didn't survive, and talking about like it's like, oh, I was like, geez, this is I can't take it.
Okay, but you
Oh,
see that feeling from a video game, right? Like, you feel it. Like, there's a lot of emotional attachment in video games too, and a lot of protective instincts. Like, you gotta keep your crew
mm,
safe, you know? You gotta defend from, you gotta keep your people happy and defend from the bad guys and stuff like that. So, like I said, there's so much to video games that people just don't ever see or ever take the time to see, you know?
um, there's also it reminds me I saw some good TED Talks about video games and, where they fit in. One, he compared right, again, it's often you get compared to the sports team, like in a job interview of like, "Oh, I was like, captain of the football team or the lacrosse team," and they're like, "Oh, yeah," and like all these leadership things are assumed, when and this particular speaker, he paired up like all the skill sets that it takes to like interact in a video game team, in these team sports. I think he's talking about like team sports and video game.
Mhm.
And I was it made me think way differently about it. It's like, oh, so yeah, I don't know if anybody has a favorite TEDx video game topic. I don't know, pop it on the thread. I don't even know if I can do that, but yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and I'll give you a good example today from my Minecraft class. So, Minecraft has two sides of it, there's creative and there's survival. And in survival, the point is don't die, right? But you have to work as a team. And so today I had two students in this class. And one of the students was down looking for things. And he said, I'm lost. I do not know how to get back to base. Where am I? Like, he was flabbergasted. The other student said, I'll come find you and I'll take you back. And so he comes and finds him. Basically, like, picture this, takes him by the hand and is like, I got you. Come on. And then as we're going, the student who was leading, he came across a monster. He said, it's a zombie. And the other student said, I got you. I will cover your back. I will get rid of the zombie on our way home. And then they both came back and it was all good. But you see, it's like those little things. It's so sweet and it's so heartwarming. Now, did those kids think I'm having a heartwarming, wonderful experience? No, they were playing a game, but they were looking out for each other's backs. They were helping each other using their different skill sets, right? The one was better at fighting, the other was better at navigating, but they both needed to be there to be able to get back to base where I was waiting for them. I had snacks. I was like, I got snacks for you guys. Come back. That's why they were coming back. But those are the kinds of things in video games that are so common that people don't think about it. But when you stop to think about it, building a team, leading a team, delegation, dependency on other people, like, those are all skills that you want to have in a job, right? In a job interview. And you learn those in a virtual world in video games, but they can directly be applied to real life. Absolutely.
Do you think they oops, excuse me. Do you think they translate? Does because in my heart, I want it to translate. I want this learner to be like, no, if I get a good friend, he's gonna come find me and I'll help them on our way back. Does it translate, do you think, or does it stay in the virtual world?
I think it does translate when the student feels safe and in a good place. Like, gaming kids, like, are the sweetest kids ever because they understand they have to work together. Like, they really are so sweet and so helpful. Like, another example is in my Animal Crossing class, you have to have a lot of money in that game. You have to have so much money and it's very hard to get money. And I cannot tell you the number of times these kiddos have given away their best things to a new student, a student who says, I just started today. And they said, you know what? I have this crazy rare item. I've only got one of it, but I think you'll really like it. You take it. Like, that kind of, generosity. And so, absolutely, it translates into the real world because you can't divide the two, like, you can't be these two separate people when you start to do that. And then the kid's like, oh, thank you so much. How does that kiddo who gave things feel? They're like, wow, that felt really good to give something. Was it anything physical and actually in the real world? No. But then maybe next time they see someone who needs help with something, they'll say, hey, I have something. I'll give it to you. And they'll remember. They may not connect it as directly because our minds aren't linear like that, but they'll remember, wow, that felt so good giving money to that kiddo in that Animal Crossing game. I'm going to let you borrow my pencil or whatever it is. But it absolutely translates into the real world 100%. Even though it's just games,
Absolutely.
it's just games.
I'm Yeah, I mean, and I'm a big fan of play-based learning. And so video games is playing, and that makes 100% sense. Well, 100% sense sounds weird.
100% sense. I like it.
100% sense.
100% sense.
Uh, well, Miss Devon, I've taken a lot of your time today, and I really, really appreciate you talking about this. I think it's super exciting, and I hope there's a parent or two that might see video games a little bit differently, or might see a new way to relate to their learners through video games, or in the least might consider you or OutSchool and some of these game classes as a resource. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, are you okay with parents reaching out to you and asking you questions about video games?
Anytime, anytime. Well, and I have parents who will say things like, I think I saw Megan say it like, if your kiddo is talking about Pokemon or Minecraft or Zelda and they won't stop, send them to us. We will talk about it with them for hours and hours and hours. And so I have parents who are like, oh, I can't, I'm not a Pokemon fan and my kiddo won't stop talking about Pokemon. I want to validate their interests. We will talk about Pokemon with them, I promise. And your kiddo will have a wonderful conversation and all of the ins and outs, you know? And so that's the other thing is, yeah, if you're not sure like how to relate to your kiddo on that way, absolutely reach out. Like me and my teachers, we love to help parents understand how they can relate to their kids in gaming. And if parents aren't interested in learning about the gaming, let us help you out, right? It takes a village. And so we'll be a part of your village. We'll cover that side while you cover the dishes and the cleaning the room, you know? We're happy to help out always.
It also reminds me of the joy of being able to see um, the joy of being able to see my child speak with someone on their interest with someone who is actually interested and can match that energy versus, I'm a good curiosity, dig in dad, be like, yeah, tell me more. But it's when I've seen it, this was specifically with Harry Potter.
Uh-huh.
I saw them speak to my nephew who is into Harry Potter, and it was a whole different level of conversation that is so that I would gladly pay for, you know? Like, so I think there is definitely educational value. My takeaway, there's educational value from connecting your learner with a mentor who understands the intricacies of this interest of the world that learners may have built themselves, may have collaborated with other learners to do, may have spent countless hours to try to develop, you know, this skill and uh, uh, you know, um, and predict the challenges that they may have to face. So I don't know. Now I feel like I'm on a soapbox here when it's your subject. Here we go. I'm mansplaining.
You're fine. You're
Oh
fine. Well, I
man,
like how you said having a
mansplaining.
mentor, because again, if we go back to sports or if we go to music, you always need a sports coach. You always need a music coach, but people don't think you need a video game coach. But it makes a big difference. It makes a huge difference for these kiddos to to be able to have an adult to look up to and to be able to say, that person gets it and I can still love this even if it's not something that anyone else I know loves it as much as I do.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, all right. I think we're gonna call it there. Is there anything that we haven't said that you want to be like, we should talk about this, or any last words? I'll give you the last word before we close out. Wait. Before that, let's see. Housekeeping. If you're still watching, there we have a new buyer promo code that you can watch. If you have any questions on any oh, thank you, Megan. Go live $10 off your first class. Any questions on any video game subjects or topics, pop it on this thread. Megan and Sarah will get to it. They'll amazing resource that we have on our social team. And we can always bring in Miss Devon to answer some of those questions. But Devon, I'll give you the last word. Miss Devon, excuse me.
Well, I'm just glad I've had a chance to talk about this because I do feel like it's such an important thing. More and more kids are gaming, more and more kids are interested in gaming, and we've just got to let them know that it's okay, that it's awesome, in fact, that it's really amazing. So, validating those interests, giving them a safe space to game online, and giving them a community. I guarantee you will see big changes in your kids. I have seen it from so many of my students, parents just saying, your social clubs have impacted my child in such a positive way. And I never thought video games would be that big of a positive influence. So if you have, I mean, you've got those $10 off your first class, check out our video game classes. We've got one on ones, we've got group classes. send them our way. See what you think.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Miss Devin, for joining us.
Yes, thank you,
Stick around,
Fernando.
everyone. Hopefully you're watching the replay. Pop your questions on the thread, and we'll see you next week on our next Out School Live. Thank you so much.
See you later.